rather the speaker. The speaker will be recorded, audio only, and that'll that'll be available on our website and our YouTube channel. So I would like to welcome someone very special to speak today, who does a lot of service, is a really cool guy, just recently celebrated an anniversary. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mikey.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mikey. I'm an alcoholic. I earned my seat here. Hello. I have no idea what to say. Every time I tell my story, it's not that the story changes. I just focus on different aspects of it. Like I used to say, okay, this is what happened, and let me go through every phase of my life, and then I'm going to talk about recovery for like 2 minutes. And I found that doesn't work. So I'm trying to think of a theme, and because it's a secular recovery group, I figured I'll share my secular journey, I guess. But I'll tell you how I earned my seat first. So I'm going to turn it into speaker view so I can't see anybody. Okay. I've been sober for 20 years. I have a scratch on my foot this last February, and that seems like an eternity. I didn't think I'd make it to 20 years old. My very first drink was right before my very first psychiatric institution. I've got all kinds of mental issues. I was put on heavy meds when I was 6 years old. My first psych hospital was when I was 14. I had my 15th birthday in there. I also was in one at 16. I've been around when it comes to institutions and shit. I have schizoaffective disorder, and well, I could go down the list. I think I have Mikey disease is what I call it. I have every kind of freaking disorder. When I was a kid, though, I was tormented by voices in my head and outside my head saying that you're an evil person, you're no good, no one likes you. And I would dream about dying. And this is like in bed at night. I didn't have any friends. It was just a shit show, really. But the first time I took a drink was absolutely by accident. I had absolutely no idea what alcohol did. All I knew is that at night I would sneak out of my bedroom, and I would eat raw hamburger meat and watch after school specials, which I know they don't have anymore, but they were called after school specials, and they were designed for younger people. And there was a couple of them where there's these party people, and they did drinking and drugs, and they were eventually got sober, but when they were drinking and stuff, they were like really cool. And I'm like, okay, well, I should try that. Maybe I can be cool. And I remember drinking Jack Daniels, and I poured it in a glass. I didn't know what shots were, and I just drank it, not knowing that it was going to do anything for me. I thought I was just getting used to the taste, like it was an adult thing. And all of a sudden I am laughing, and it felt so good because I hadn't really had any belly laughs like that. And I woke up in my bedroom on the floor. There was throw up all around my face. And I was just like, I have to do that again. That was just the most amazing feeling for me. And it really became my cure for my Mikey disease. It was absolutely like taking my first breath. As far as consequences, I eventually saw the witch doctor because I needed something stronger, and I did all kinds of other chemicals, anything to change the way I felt, and more importantly, to change the way I thought. Eventually I got on meds, and I went to tons of therapy, and and all this kind of stuff. But drugs and alcohol were absolutely my solution to everything. I can't, I couldn't imagine not being medicated. I couldn't, I just couldn't understand. I didn't understand how people weren't doing this all the time. Yes, you wreck cars. Yes, you get headaches. Yes, people tend to not be around you, but that's what goes with it. I mean, if you're going to drink, you're going to crash your car. It's just part of doing it. And I kind of lived that way. Eventually, I got to some bad bottoms, and the first one was actually I was in a psychiatric facility. I was 16. It was 1986. And I went to my first AA meeting. And the reason I actually went wasn't because I was coming back from past drunk all the time. It was because I knew they had cookies and caffeine at this meeting, where on the adolescent unit, you couldn't have cookies or caffeine, no sugar or caffeine. So I went to this meeting and everyone was really old, like 30-ish or something like that. I mean, old at the time. And I'm 50 now, or I'm 52. So oh, happy Pi Day, by the way. Anyway, so I went in there and it was horrible. It was all adults. I was like, this is not going to work. And I sat there and I looked up at the steps, and I got as far as the capital P in power. And I had to go to lots of Catholicism classes when I was a kid. My parents dragged me to church, literally like from my bed. And I knew the capital P referred to a deity. I didn't even get to the word God. I just saw the P and I'm like, this is definitely not going to work. Because it's not that I didn't, well, it is that I didn't believe. The reason I didn't believe in God so early was there is this book. I'm also a sex addict. I love sex. All right. But it's not just that I love it. It's that it was another way to change the way I felt. And I was completely psychotically addicted to it. And throughout my whole journey, that's been my primary addiction. Everything was kind of driven by that. But anyway, I don't know how old I was, but there was this book on my parents' shelf called Everything You Wanted to Know About Sex, But Were Afraid to Ask. And I remember reading it and I looked up gay for like pointers or whatever. And it said, you or me, gay people have no souls. Lesbians were vampires. I swear to God, it said that. They only have sex in bathrooms. They'll never know a true relationship. They're just basically evil people. And they've since put a disclaimer on that book. But anyway, it was terrible. And I remember, and they gave Bible quotes of why thou shalt not lay with a man as with a woman. It's an abomination, all that shit. And I remember getting my parents' Bible out and looking up these verses that were in that book. And I'm like, I'm 10. I'm not evil. I'm not an evil person. And this book says that I'm an abomination. And I just worked it out in my head. I'm not an abomination. I'm not an evil person. It wasn't that I was an abomination. It was that I wasn't evil. And if that's wrong, and this is the inerrant word of God, then fucking the whole book is shit, because it's supposed to be absolutely perfect, the word of God. And I just worked it out in my head. Well, if that's not true, then none of it's true. And I kind of forgot about it. I mean, you could basically be talking about kneecaps when you talked about God, and I would be like, okay, whatever. And I went to church and I sat through those sermons and all that kind of shit. I'm off on a tangent. Anyway, I was sitting in this room, I saw the capital P, and I'm like, this is bullshit. But then they were talking like about their third DUI, and I didn't have a driver's license yet. And I got this phrase, which I absolutely hate, and I try not to say it ever. People would come up to me and say, I spilled more liquor than you ever drank. And they would say, oh, I'm so glad you came in so young, because you didn't have to deal with the hurt and the pain that we did. And I'm like, okay, I'm in my third psychiatric institution. I've been through some shit, but it made me feel like I didn't qualify to be there. I felt like when they said, oh, all the pain that I had, I'm like, well, shit, I've got tons of drinking left. I mean, if I'm going to be, yeah, anyway, it's what I thought. So I remember sitting there, and then all of a sudden somebody said, I feel alone in a crowded room. I'll never forget. I remember what time it was. I remember sitting there and hearing that and going, I relate to that. And the meeting wasn't about steps or God. It was about feelings and what it's like to handle your feelings and what people who are well adjusted do with feelings. And I was like, this is my home. They were talking about stuff that I absolutely related to. And I knew, and my psychiatrist told me I would be in some kind of program for the rest of my life. And it's turned out to be AA. But I truly heard that. And I tried to stay sober, but we went on a boat for a wedding. And when you're out in a boat, you can drink no matter what age you are. So I drank, and trigger warning, tried to rape someone when I was drunk. I mean, it was really a just, when I drink, I'm a totally different person, but yet I feel like I'm the smartest person in the world. So it was a bad time. And it was the first relapse that I had. I'm going to go through them. Eventually I got to a halfway house after a couple more relapses. And I actually stayed sober for 3 years. And this was St. Francis in the South Florida, in Fort Lauderdale. And they played monk music in the hallways 24 hours a day. We had to go to Vespers. It was run by Pastor Connie. It was uber religious. We had to go to all the, but it absolutely never crossed my mind that had anything to do with sobriety. I remember somebody that became my closest friend. I was outside in front smoking cigarettes with her, and I said, what do you think about that, the God shit? And she goes, oh, I don't believe any of that bullshit. And I'm like, oh, I still didn't think I was an atheist. God wasn't a thing. It just wasn't I ignored it. It's like if people talk about their hip surgery. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. So that's never been a real problem. However, when I finally had my last relapse and got sober for good this time, I found out that I really did need to figure out the God part of AA, because all these people say how amazing AA has been for them and how all this stuff has happened, and they always revert to God and the steps. And I found a hack that works. But before I go to the hack, I will tell you about my very last bottom, or my actual bottom. And I'd had lengths of sobriety. I had a couple months once. I had 3 years from Fort Lauderdale, but that's because I hung around sober people and didn't go into bars, basically. That was my program. But my very last relapse, I was in the Center for Alcohol abuse and co-occurring disorders, so crazy and drunk. And I was there on crystal meth. That was kind of my drug at the time. And I, was crazy. I thought people were coming in and out of my room. I accused people of stealing things. And it was my first day. That night, and this is ironic, I guess, that night, 2 people came into my room and they started saying how I was going to hell, and they brought in a Bible. And when I think about that, I'm like, that was just so weird, but they did. And I was like, oh, well, let me show you what else is in that Bible. And I'm like, you have a tattoo, you're going to hell. Da, 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 da. And they were like, oh, wow, we didn't know that. And I'm like, let's smoke a cigarette in the bathroom. So we were like smoking cigarettes, and then someone knocks on the door and shit, we got busted. So I know what to do, because I've been in a zillion institutions. I'm like, okay, tomorrow morning, I'll just go and I will confess and take whatever punishment they have. I was there one day. What could they do? and I'll be on like assessment level or whatever, and then eventually I'll be fine. But I've lost a day. So I did, and they kicked me out. And that really hurt because the reason I was in that place is that 24 hours before, I was in a psychiatric hospital, and they were kicking me out for the second time. The reason was because they, and this always gets me, the first time I was there, I really wanted to get sober. It was February 14th. And I was like, Valentine's Day, that's a real great day to get sober. And when I went into an emergency room and I threatened everyone, and I said I had to drink my piss. It was terrible. I got there and they kicked me out after 3 days. And I said, yeah, but I have a plan to kill myself. The person that's picking me up is my dealer. I mean, I said all the right things for them to continue to keep me, and they kicked me out, and I didn't get it. A week later, through completely no planning, I didn't want to do this, I got Baker Acted again. That's what they call in Florida, a Baker Act. In California, it's a 5150. There's all kinds of different things. So I got put in again, and I'm like, okay, I was tied to a chair, I was naked, it was a whole big thing to get me there. I went to the psych hospital again, and after 24 hours, they said, we're gonna discharge you. And there's I can't even tell you what that felt like. And there were 2 people in my bedroom, and it was the doctor and a psych tech, which means they need a witness when that happens. So I said, why are you kicking me out? You know that part in the big book where it says he felt the doors of hell close with a clang? When he said, we're letting you go again, I felt that clang. I felt that. And I said, why? And they said, because you're a sociopath. And unfortunately, we don't have treatment for you. There is no treatment for you. There's none that we can do here. I mean, there's programs, I guess. Here's a United Way flyer. But yeah. And I didn't have insurance, but I had a father who knows lawyers. So I called him, and they eventually said, oh, you know what? We can put you in the the place for co-occurring disorders. Anyway, long story too long. When they're kicking me out of the second place, I'm being walked to the door, and I'm really hurt, and I don't understand why I keep getting kicked out. I understand that was nuts, and I understand that you know, I can be very an asshole, but I just couldn't get it. And she says to me, honey, when they do the exit interview, just say that you want to kill yourself, and they'll put you in the psych ward, and then you can come back. And I'm like, I don't want to kill myself. That's the point of me being here, is I don't want to kill myself. I want to live. And she's like, no, honey, wink, wink. Tell them that you want to kill yourself, and they'll put you in the psych ward, and then in 3 days you can come back. And I'm like, no, I want to live. No, they're treating me so bad. I was like all dramatic, and it was because they were telling me I couldn't do what I wanted to do. Basically, I was right. How dare you screw me over? So as I'm at the exit interview, they're like, so do you want to hurt yourself, or I don't know, kill yourself maybe, kind of, yeah? And I'm like, no, I want to live. How can you do this to me? And they're like, okay. And now I am in front of the place in Sanford, which is a shithole in Florida. I have 2 bags. I have one bag with my discharge papers and a cell phone and a charger. And I have, in the other hand, the shirt they cut off me in the ER and the Encyclopedia of Unusual Sex Practices in that bag. That's all I had. No money, no change, nothing. And I broke down, and I started to freak out. And then it hit me for the very first time in my entire life. I understood what happened. I was standing out in front of that place because of me. It wasn't them. It wasn't that they kicked me out. It's because I could not let go of being right. And I knew that she was basically telling me, dude, this is how you do it. We're doing this to teach you a lesson or whatever. But my obnoxious, defiant ass got me there. And I remember falling to my knees and saying, God or Buddha or Vishnu or anything, universe, I cannot do this. I am not capable of doing this. Anyway, I'm going to skip all that stuff and I'm going to tell you how I got the hack. So I'm sober in AA and basically I'm doing the same shit. I cut all my friends out. Well, friends, I cut all my connections out. I changed my phone number. I moved. Well, at the time I was living in my Jeep. Eventually I moved. I basically hung out around sober people and didn't go to places I would drink. That's how I stayed sober. There was things in meetings that you hear, you're like, oh, that really, I feel that. I know I'm going to internalize that. And it may help you for a day or two or during the meeting, but after that, it kind of falls out. And I got to a point, I had about 9 years sober and I was at that jumping off point that they talk about. I was ready to end it. And it dawned on me that I had never really worked the steps other than like a homework assignment where they say, okay, write down things you're powerless over, write down things that you're unmanageable. And, you know, like, okay, check, step one, check, step two. But I always ignored the God shit and, you know, did what people wanted me to. But I'm like, this time, if I'm going to get this, I need to work these steps, but I have to do it with honesty because that's the principle behind the first step is honesty. So I started out by saying, I don't believe in God. If we can work these steps, that's fine. But the God thing I have to do something about it. And I started thinking, what is it that they're actually doing? When they're praying for God's will, there is nothing they're praying to, they're thinking. So what are they actually doing? Well, what I came up with is they're aligning themselves with their ethics. You know, don't steal, be a good person, neighborly love. That's all they're doing. Is this what I'm thinking about doing? Is this ethical? If it is, I'm doing God's will. If it's not, I've taken my will back. Easy. A lot of things like that. When I figured out what are they actually doing, the only thing I can't handle is when they say, oh, I had to get to the dentist and all the traffic lights turned green. Jesus. And I'm like, no, you probably turned green 1,000 times. It's just you noticed it this one time. Anyway, basically, I kind of worked out. However, the greater power, that's one thing. It doesn't say higher power, by the way, in the steps. It says greater power. My greater power, how is I going to do that? They say you have to plug into it. And it's a power source. It's a power that's greater than me. What the hell is that? I really thought about it. And the first thing I came up with was the law. If I follow the law, I probably won't get arrested. That made sense to me. And rules. If I follow the rules, I'll probably get the desired outcome. Even when I don't want to follow the rules, if I force myself to, if I make that one of my ethics, then that's a power that's greater than me. But then it went off the rails. And I'll tell you, it sounds weird, but hear me out. Google is a power that's greater than me. YouTube is a power that's greater than me. And this is where I really started exploding with this power greater than myself. If I have a problem, no matter what the problem is, Google and YouTube have an answer. There is a TED Talk somewhere on that issue. And I'll tell you the very first time that I used it, silly, but in the third step, I turned my will in my life over to the care of that power, which means I made an agreement that if I have a problem, the last thing I can do is continue to let it be a problem. I made a commitment with myself, and I remember I would wear long sleeve shirts, and I'd roll them up, and then halfway, like an hour later, they'd roll down. And it pisses me off, and it's always pissed me off, and I roll them up and they roll down. Well, it dawned on me as I was rolling them up that there's got to be some kind of instruction on this. I mean, they have instruction on how to toast things. So I went to Google and I saw this video, and they said if you pull it up and then roll from the bottom up, your sleeves won't fall down. And my gosh, that works. And I've never had that problem again. That was a problem that plagued me forever, was how to frickin' make the things stay up. And now I don't have that problem anymore. Now that sounds silly. However, when my aunt died, and I was devastated, I looked up how to grieve on a TED Talk. I went to my sponsor, who's another, he's an idiot sometimes, but he's another power that's greater than me, is other people's opinion. I got over that. And I couldn't have done it had I not done that third step where I said, I'm turning everything over to the answer. And if I can't find that answer, then I'm going to stay in the problem. And sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's really difficult, but it really works. And when I look at it that way, the steps really are fucking mind-blowing. And I can sit in a traditional meeting, and when they say, oh, you know, I took my will back yesterday, I'm like, okay, I know what that means. But I'll give you another example. My whole recovery program can be summed up, and I talked about this yesterday. My whole recovery program can be summed up in words taken from the last 3 steps: continue, to improve, and practice. My whole thing here is, in recovery, it is so easy to become stagnant. It is so easy to just, you know, and you hear about it all the time, but with long timers, it's the desert years, they call it. You get to about 5 or 6 years sober, and you're like, I've been sober for 5 or 6 years. I don't need to go to that many meetings. I'm kind of cool. And then you sort of stop going to meetings, and even if you stay going to meetings, you're like, you know, coasting. And the trick to that is to continually want to improve. Anytime, like I got fired, I've been fired a couple times in sobriety. This last time I got fired, I remember I was real upset and I drove home, but as soon as I put the car keys on the little hook, I had a really good rest of the night. That's not me. That is not my doing. If you saw me 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, and were to say that you'd have something dramatic like getting fired and you'd get over it basically in a couple hours, I would never have believed you. But I've done so much work on accepting reality with meditation, and I'll end on this. Practicing. Let me tell you about meditation. In the 11th step, it says, sought knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out. Having had a spiritual wake, no, that's the 3rd, 12th. Fuck it. Anyway, they talk about meditation, right? And it says, it says meditation, and I always heard the prayer and meditation as one word. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. That is how I heard it. But somebody pointed out the meditation part, and I didn't know how to meditate. So I went to a Zen center and was pleasantly surprised. I didn't know Buddhists don't believe in God. Most of them don't believe in God. It's a totally different thing. So I'm like, oh, this is my place. And they taught me how to meditate. My conscious contact with my power that's greater than myself, that power is the present moment and whatever is happening right now. I meditate so I can focus on the present moment. And I'll tell you how hard that was at the beginning. And I hear it all the time. People say, oh, I tried to meditate, but I couldn't sit still. I'm like, well, fucking idiot, you tried it one time. It's like the way and I didn't mean to call anyone an idiot that's having trouble with meditation. I know I was the same way. I'm like, this is stupid. Why am I just sitting here breathing? But if you're learning to type, say, you're going to mess up your fingers. You're going to do the ASF, ASDF, ASDF on the left hand, JKL colon on the other. And you're going to do all these fingers, learn where to go. But the first time you try to type, you're going to completely screw up. You have to practice it. You have to keep doing it. Even though you're failing, you have to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And eventually it becomes a working part of your mind. You can do it without looking. Well, it was the same way for meditation, and it continues to be the same way for meditation. There's a reason why they say it's meditation practice. All you do is you're focusing on your breath, and when you lose track of that, which you absolutely will, you realize, oh shit, I'm not breathing anymore. And then you come back to how my breath is right now. Every time I do that, it's one program push-up. And the more I do it, the more I can let go of whatever's in my head and focus on the moment at hand, I get better at it. And then the beauty of it is when I'm not meditating, I realize when I'm being controlled by this and I'm not cooking anymore, I'm thinking, or I'm not driving anymore. There goes my exit. I'm actually in this thinking thing. I can let that go and come back to the moment. And it has changed everything for me. In the book, it says, we were rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence that we had not ever dreamed. I absolutely know that the present moment and everything that's happening right now is that fourth dimension that nobody sees because we're too busy looking somewhere else. We're looking for that next or the past whatever it is. We are always there. And to be able to focus on what's happening, it's like I remember someone was going through something, and I said they had gotten fired, actually, and I said to them, "You're not getting fired right now. Right now, you're safe. At this moment, the temperature in here is pretty comfortable. You're safe right now. You were fired, 2-3 days ago, but right now everything is kind of okay, isn't it?" And that kind of is the theory of life, I think. Anyway, I'll completely end with thank you very much for my sobriety, because you were the people that taught me all this shit. And we don't get along all the time, and I think I'm special and you think you're special, but you have completely changed my life. And I can never repay those people that have got me this far. And I just want you to know that you're one of those people. So thank you for letting me share. I'm Mikey, I'm an alcoholic. And I'm going on mute.
Thank you, Mikey. So great to hear from you.